Okay, welcome back to It's Kind of a Big Deal. Today we are recording episode 16, and I'm Jenna Horton.
And I'm Olivia Bondi, and we have our very first guest. Billy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Bill O'Mani. I'm a partner at O'Mani McLeod, LLP. We specialize in, my partner Jen McLeod specializes in family law, and myself, real estate wills, corporate, commercial, and estate work. So thank you for having me, ladies.
Yes, of course.
Jenna, do you want to talk about why we have Billy on?
Yes, so last week we were discussing love and money and moving in with your partner and how that's going to look. And so the next step to that would be taking it to a more legal aspect and talking about things like cohabs and prenups, whether you're just moving in together or getting married.
And Jenna and I love to talk about things that we are not qualified to talk about.
Yeah.
But we thought we would have an expert on and ask him some questions that you guys might have on what that actually looks like to have a prenup done up or have a cohab done up. Can you speak to us, Billy, on what's the difference between a cohab and a prenup?
Well, first of all, ladies, let me tell you,
Okay.
experts, I would not say I'm an expert in cohabitational agreements or in prenuptial agreements.
Okay. So we're down here and you're a step above us and there's still people above you.
Of course, yes.
Okay.
But no, we always preface, any lawyer will say, you know, I do recommend that you go to a family law lawyer who specializes in these and deals with these every day. But I am glad to help in any way I can and help simplify the procedure for everyone out there.
And you have done some work in family law, correct?
I have, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Prior to specializing in real estate, or what did that look like?
When I was a student and when I was articling, so I dabbled in it here and there. I had great mentors and lawyers above me who helped me out. Some are judges now and other, litigators who were in practice for over 35, 40 years.
Yeah.
So I've been very lucky, and so I've gotten a broad spectrum of how it works, so I'm lucky. But yes, my calling was in real estate, and I prefer that's...
So do we.
Yeah, us too.
Yes,
So I guess
I'm on wills and estates, and so if you need a will, call Bill.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Love it.
But it's I like the quick turnover, and I really enjoy meeting new people, and it's hard in family law. There's no winner or loser, so the hardest part is it's a breakdown of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
So I like happy law, as I say.
Yes, that is nice. Yeah, and I guess that's the benefit of having these agreements in place, is that we're trying to decrease the negative feelings when it comes time if you have to break down a relationship. Hopefully these agreements are in place and you're going to try to reduce that pain.
That's exactly right.
That's the goal.
So the biggest thing with cohabitational agreements and prenuptial agreements you have to remember is prenuptial is it's before marriage, right? So people are intending to get married, and cohabitational agreement is people are living together, aren't ready to get married yet, or may not get married, and it helps solidify a contract for them to give them clarity of assets. And it's a contract that basically is the division of what the property is and assets in the event of a breakdown, right?
And what would it look like if I had a cohab in place and then I were to get married? Does that dissolve the cohab?
You would essentially, it would dissolve the cohab. I would clarify that. It depends on the terms of the contract, because you could potentially, have it set up that one day we can transfer it over and it might be a seamless prenuptial agreement. Because in cohabs, you generally don't discuss spousal support, or if there are children, they don't really put in child support. And sometimes child support in a cohab or in a prenup may not be legally binding if it is prejudicial towards another party.
This is interesting.
Right.
So I mentioned this to Liv when we were getting into this conversations and coming up with the questions we wanted to ask you. And through my own experience, I just realized that you can't really sign off on child support. Like, it's not legally binding, like you just said.
Yes.
That's interesting.
That's right.
But she doesn't even have a child.
Yes, and that's the thing, though. And so in my current situation, you're well aware of that. Like, obviously Matt has a child and I don't. We don't plan on having our own kids. But although Frank is not my child, I cannot sign off. Like, there could still be child support payable. Potentially?
In your circumstance?
Yeah. If you're like a step-in parent or...
Now that can be that can be a factor.
The craziest thing to me.
It's just you don't want to be saying the wrong thing, because every situation is completely different.
Yeah.
it's amazing. One thing I can take is everyone's situation is different. People's lives are different. Your neighbor, your friend, your mom's best friend's sister, they went through this, Laura, and this happened. Everybody's different, and it's a whole.
Yeah, family law would be such a can of worms.
So yes, in some circumstances, if a step parent is coming in and they are the main provider and are paying for everything, you have to look at how it breaks down and how the family law proceedings would commence and what happens. But there is potential that a step parent could be on the hook for paying additional fees for another child.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of going back to just speak to professionals before you're getting into these positions and making sure that you're aware of what could potentially come in the breakdown of a relationship.
Yeah, versus assuming, based on what you've heard from other people. Like, I think that's such a common misconception, even that our clients talk to us about, is like, oh, this is how it would be divided, and it's not always cut and dry, right?
It is not. No, absolutely not.
Always looked at on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
And it is, and it also depends on the financials. I mean, as you know, in your situations, obviously you have to do what's called a financial statement, okay?
Yeah.
And what that is it's a breakdown of everybody's assets and debts, showing the full picture of what is coming in to a marriage, or is already in a marriage, or coming into a cohabit, two people coming
which
together.
Personally I think is the most overwhelming part of doing a prenup. In my situation, is not only, okay, we can agree on how we want things to be divided and broken down, but actually establishing what you're coming in with something that would stand up in court.
And it is, and that's the point of having it, is because you want full financial disclosure, because some people may in the past have tried to hide certain assets or hide
in the Bahamas.
Yeah, right. I don't think any of us are there. But the thing is you want to make sure, because it's not fair.
Yeah.
You have to take, and it's a horrible analogy, because two boss ladies like yourself, the 50s and the 60s of the stay-at-home mom rearing the children and taking care of the house,
right?
And the man going up, those days are gone,
yeah.
Right? And so it is daunting to have both family assets and both families or both parties bring in what they have, right?
Yeah.
And it could be based on a year by year, because you could have a really good year in real estate and kill it, but when it gets to a division of a family, the separation or a breakdown, they kind of look over the last 3 years if it goes through family law proceedings, right? So you could have a really good year, an amazing year, or a bad year, but they take the average if it gets to that point. But with your financial statement, you provide everything that you have, and you kind of make sure that everyone is aware of debts or hidden bank accounts in the Bahamas.
Make sure.
Right?
That was definitely the hardest part for myself, and so I guess Matt and I in our situation had a bit of funny to call it an advantage, but we both had done our financial disclosures for our separations, which then we could kind of bring those over and use it when we were putting our cohabs together.
Right, because you've just gone through separations so recently, you can bring it up to date.
Yeah, everything was pretty much up to date. We didn't have very many documents to add. I guess benefits of getting into that kind of quickly after the separation, or while the separation was still going on. So glass half full outlook on that one.
Yeah, seriously.
And usually in your circumstance and others, it is a good thing to look at it's a snapshot of where you were at in life, right?
Yeah.
But from a year-to-year basis, I mean, when you file your taxes, you're kind of looking at that stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, unless you win the lottery or you have an inheritance or something like that, it doesn't really change,
right?
It shouldn't change overwhelmingly, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That was actually a question I had. What if we had a prenup agreement and then I won the lottery right after we got married? Would he be entitled?
Or the dream home.
Or the dream home.
It's coming up.
Would he be entitled to half that?
Well, if you win the dream home, does that dream home become a matrimonial home?
No, because you don't want to split that 50%.
Well, I wouldn't move into it
Okay, so
there's
that's
a road
not
in the
your
backyard.
matrimonial home.
These
Yeah.
girls, eh?
Last year when the dream home draw was going on, Jenna and I were both like off work, sitting in the kitchen, waiting to win. And her brother was like, I have never seen two people so mentally ill in my life. Like when we didn't win, we're like, what?
The phone just didn't ring.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, call my phone. Make sure it's still working.
So in prenuptial agreements, if that's a part of a limitation with it is you cannot, when it comes to a matrimonial home, you cannot dictate where it goes and what happens. You can't say, I get it.
Right.
Right? There's circumstances.
And you
obviously,
can't
it's a
kick someone out
matrimonial.
either.
If you're
right?
both on title
Yeah.
and it's a matrimonial home, you can't legally, I don't want to say too much about that because there's circumstances that come into play, but
Okay.
yeah, you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
want to. I absolutely recommend you seek family law
Once
Very
again.
advice.
officially.
Honestly, with
Right.
anything we talk about on this podcast, it's like there's full disclosure, like seek professional help because we're just chatting.
Yeah, we're just chatting.
Yeah, oh, I understand that, but no, I don't want to give anybody the wrong advice because, like I said, it's not my area of expertise, as you would say. But no, if you are both on title and you're both there, you both can stay there. Live in the basement if you need. Don't
Yeah.
give up the matrimonial
With the
home.
cats in the basement.
Yeah,
The unfinished basement. Oh my God.
it's like the old saying: you can't cut the bike in half, so you can't cut the cat in half.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Stay
so
down
you
there.
have to find a solution.
Right. Yes,
That's why we see
And then
people living
when
in the
children
village.
are involved with prenuptial agreements and cohabitation, well, cohabitational agreements don't deal with children, like we'd mentioned, but it's a difficult time for everybody, right? And
With
advice.
ours, we had it, I think, done in a way that it does mention children and it does also mention spousal in our cohab. So I think that the goal with ours was that it would then be able to transfer into a prenup if marriage becomes an option down the road.
Yeah, like it's so much work to put into it that
Yes,
we want to make.
Yeah, we wanted to be able to transfer into that. That's the goal. And with the thought of revisiting it every 5 or so years, or big life changes like marriage, so then hopefully it holds up for a
That's
long
right.
term.
And usually in holding up is a big thing, right? Obviously
Yeah.
you want to make sure you have full financial disclosure, everything is done, and I do recommend that you do everything through lawyers.
Yeah, that was one of our questions. And so do you need independent representation?
Tricky question. Now, technically, you do not have to have independent legal advice. Two people can sign a contract and it can be binding. However, if it's not done right, or if there's discrepancies, or if somebody isn't full and honest, then that contract can be thrown out. So by having independent legal advice and having lawyers draft it, that creates it in a more binding sense to ensure that it is done right and you don't have the worry about something being thrown out or a provision in the contract being voided because it wasn't fair
Right,
or
okay.
just or
That's the scariest part. And like, do you see them? I don't know if you would see this, but do you see them getting thrown out because too much time has passed? Is that a thing?
It's not. That's a question for the courts. I couldn't answer that question. A judge would have to look at that and see. It'd have to be what's the discrepancy and what's the issue. I mean, if somebody did have an account in the Bahamas that they didn't have, or there was a clause that two people put in, so I get the matrimonial home, that clause would be thrown out because you can't, just kick somebody out because you put it in, right?
Okay.
And a lawyer would draft this would be able to spot this and say we can't do that, or
Right.
I don't recommend this, or anything like that.
Right, because it might run into issues down the road, and that's the scariest part. Is like you go through all of the work
And the money.
and the money of getting it prepared, and then it gives you like a false sense of security if you don't have it done properly.
And it was not done properly.
Yep.
And this is funny, I was actually laughing about this because I quoted this recently, but Ben Franklin, I know we can't really talk about Americans these days, but Ben Franklin said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Wow.
Right? So that means it's good. You guys know what that means.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's good to spend a little bit of money in the long run to
Say it
protect
again
yourself.
to Olivia because I'm already invested in the situation, have the cohab.
I sent one
But-
email, and I was like, "Oh, it's too much work."
And you said too much money, and I said, Olivia, this is going to save you so much in the long run. If, God forbid.
So speaking
Sorry,
of
Aaron.
Valentine's Day, they are in love. So this is in the event of a breakup, Aaron.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah,
I know.
Jenna's planning for
I'm
the
just like,
breakdown.
No. The wedding hasn't even happened yet. But I'm very blunt with this stuff, and I have no problem talking about it. I'm lucky enough that Matt was the same, and we just sat down on the couch and drank some wine and got it done, and then sent it off to our respective lawyers, and it was taken care of. But
And I say this as well, if life was sunshine and rainbows, I wouldn't be in a job. right?
Yeah.
And you know what they also say, why do we wear a seatbelt? Not to get into an accident, just in case.
Wow, Billy, full of wisdom.
All the one-liners, I love this. It's so great. It's so good.
Oh boy.
So, when going back to financial disclosure, when I was going through this and I was discussing with my lawyer, she was saying that is really takes the most time and the most money because you have to collect all of these documents. So, what are you thinking for a timeline for something like this? How long does it take? Like Liv's getting married in July.
171 days.
Oh boy, yeah, I would get on to
Pitter
that
patter.
now. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, the thing is with that, I mean, it can take 2 to 3 months. I mean, you want to be able to not just write in, but you have to be able to provide, you know, proof of documentation and all of that, and getting it together, sifting through it. And family law lawyers are busy.
So
right?
busy.
And so average time, I'd say 2 to 3 months to 6 months.
I started my process
Okay.
in September. When we moved in together, we started the cohab agreement, and Matt is just now signing his on February 14th. Happy Valentine's
So
Day.
that's been
September to February, 6 months?
6 months.
Yeah.
And you are dealing with moving parts, right?
Yeah.
You have to remember too that family law lawyers around Christmas time get busy dealing with custody and access,
Ooh,
right?
true.
Around September, dealing with school, zoning, people moving, things like that, right?
Right.
Those are things I'd never think of.
Yeah.
And obviously, a cohabitational agreement, you know, it's good for a lawyer to have timelines in place and to have expectations outlined right away, right? For you to say, hey, I need this done in a week, I'm getting married, that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you want to pay top dollar, I'm sure they'll do it
Someone
for
could
20
get it done.
grand, you
Right,
know?
yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
but you have to remember somebody else, you know, they have trial, they have settlement conferences. Each day there's something new for lawyers, right? So for family law lawyers that I see, I mean, I know my partner is very busy, and you get an emergency motion and it puts a lot of people on the back burner because if you were getting ready for, you know, an emergency motion, or if it was you would want your lawyer to have full attention of your file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people do have to be understanding, right? But I would say average 2 to 3 to 6 months.
Okay,
Right.
that's okay. I'm
That's
probably
good
on the
to know.
6 months. 'Cause even collecting your documentation, right?
Absolutely.
Like, depending on your assets, can take a long time.
Yeah.
When you get in touch with, you know, your accountant and making sure that that's all wrapped up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But they do say, I mean, you asked, I saw that you had mentioned kind of price and, you know, is it expensive? But every situation is different, right? Every person has their own life, its own situation. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it can cost between, they say, maybe small town lawyers like Sarnia, maybe between, you know, 2,000 to 6,000. If you're in Toronto, you pay Toronto prices, right? So you're, you know, maybe between 5 to 10. So it just depends on who you pick too, but
Yeah.
you also, you know, you pay for quality, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's not McDonald's.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking to just get it done as quickly as possible, you know, you may end up with some issues later on down the road.
Yeah, which I think would give me more anxiety than not having one at all.
Yes, right, absolutely. And a nice thing too with most lawyers, at least in my experience, was that they will do a free 30-minute consultation with you to just ask your questions. At least in my experience, is that common practice?
It can be.
Okay.
Each lawyer is different.
Yeah.
It does. One thing that does happen, from what I see, is that it tends to go over 30 minutes. It's hard to get full disclosure of people going in 30
Right.
minutes, or they don't come back, and so it can be a bit of not a waste of time for a lawyer, but some do, some don't.
Yeah,
right?
I
It
just found that was a
depends.
nice place to start when I was getting into this type of stuff with separation, but then I used the same lawyer for the cohab, and the 30-minute consultation kind of answered a few questions, and then after that retained the lawyer, which unfortunately, even with a cohab, you still have to pay a retainer up front in my experience, and I think that alone was $2,000 for me. I did use a lawyer out of the GTA that was referred to me from a local lawyer, and she was excellent, but I think that between both representation, like our cohab will be, I would say at least $10,000 to put in place. But like you said, the ounce now is worth pounds later.
Exactly,
So,
right? And what happens there is obviously you would have known that Matt didn't meet with your lawyer.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So she dealt with you alone. You're
Yes.
retained by, you retain her. She's your representative.
Yeah.
And that's one thing people kind of forget or don't know is if you're doing these agreements, the lawyer has to act for one person only. They draft it, get all the information, and then they send it to either their other lawyer or they get everything ready with financial disclosure and an independent legal advice.
Right.
A lawyer will look at it for a nominal fee, right? But having a nominal fee, sometimes lawyers don't look to do independent legal advice on prenuptial agreements or on separation agreements, or
Yeah,
because
just 'cause
there
it's
could
so
be
big.
there could be something that they miss and they don't want to be liable.
Okay, that's good to know.
For it.
Yeah. When
So-
do you think is the right time? When does someone need a cohab and a prenup? Like, is there?
When do they need one?
Yeah.
I mean, if I can help all the family law lawyers, always. You know?
Yeah.
It depends. Every circumstance is different. I think that if you both, nowadays people are they kind of live together for a little while, they're not getting married. People kind of grow and you'll see if you have any doubt, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're worried. I mean, having these in place creates clarity, peace of mind for, each other, right? And it kind of, you go into these, especially sometimes in blended families, you've made your way, I've made my way, cohabitational.
Yeah.
And, you guys are sometimes people who have separated already and have gone through the process are adamant on it.
Absolutely, because you've been burned once, or you've gone through.
Taking one to the chin.
Yeah. Oh, that's my favorite line. Take one to the chin. Yeah. I've taken one too many to the chin, and that's why the cohab's in place.
And that's right. So, and also it's to protect each other. So I
Yeah.
do recommend everybody get one, but like I said, if life was sunshine and rainbows, then we wouldn't need them.
Yeah.
So most people should have them.
And it's so nice to have these conversations while you are in love. And there may still be points of tension. It might not be smooth sailing for the conversation of what your prenup or cohab will say. But overall, you're still in a place of happiness to discuss these harder conversations rather than doing it when you strongly dislike
Yeah,
each
because
other.
people always say, "Oh, I would never do that. I would never do that," and they do.
And that's the other, people often come in, wait, we're gonna do this, we got this, it's nice and easy, simple, but there could be a minor difference in what people make. I mean,
Yeah.
the Valley here, it's predominantly males who work in the Valley and process operators and
Yep.
everything along those lines. And the Valley has been healthy. They make
Yeah.
a lot of money, and young people, 25-year-olds, are making over 100K.
Yeah.
That's great, but if you're not have a specific trade or in a specific field, you're not necessarily making that kind of money. So if you're mid-20s, early 30s, there might be a discrepancy in how it works out. So we're happy. The payout might not be 50-50, 60-40, or nothing at all. You're coming in with this, I'm coming in with that.
Yep.
The house we have, we split 50-50 minus whatever you have somebody put up the down payment.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
you get all that stuff set up and it helps, but we're in love and it could create the fight, right? So
Yeah, yeah. But it is good to know too that like every agreement is so custom to your situation, and however you decide that you want to break that up in the end.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's kinda
specific to your
nice.
relationship, which
Yeah,
is nice.
yeah, I like that. Now, how would you have any advice for people that they are the income earners or the breadwinner of the relationship? How would you then approach your significant other if they are maybe making less money than you?
I mean, it depends. If that person is that person going through school? Are they looking to right? So
every situation's different.
I keep saying that, but I mean, I think honesty is the best approach. If, honey, something's bugging me. I kind of want to talk about this. Half these people's parents will probably, protect yourself. This and that.
Yeah.
My sisters,
Yeah, throw your mom under the
aunts,
bus.
moms,
Right.
exactly.
That's true.
And when it comes to big financial decisions, these usually come up, the purchase of a new house or a different house. And it's kind of good to, when you're making those big decisions in life for the next stepping stones, it's kind of nice to kind of address it right then and there, right?
Is that something that you would segue when you're doing a real estate transaction?
I can't give you my secrets, but absolutely, yeah.
You should, yeah.
I often absolutely recommend, and I do go through that. I can't tell you these things, but no, yes, that's the benefit of me working alongside litigation lawyers and family law lawyers, and my firm, who is like an all-in house, can provide, you know, the family law side of advice, but also the real estate side, and
slide them down the hall,
and estate planning and all of that.
One-stop shop.
Right. So. But I absolutely do segue into that, and we talk about it, and I say, listen, this is how it is. I know that you're not planning on this, but we do have a form, that kind of an intentions form that we have our first-time home buyers or young couples or anything fill out, because who's providing this? What's that? Are we renovating? Where's the money? What happens in the event of death, breakup? You know,
that's good.
And that's often people who aren't married yet, because it's completely different.
Yes,
right? So this is young couples looking to, you know, who are just starting out, not married, and looking to get into. Or even when parents provide down payments, they want to protect their child. And we address that, right? You know, but there's also unjust enrichment. If somebody didn't put a down payment in, but have been in the house for a long period of time, and they have provided, you know, renovations and little things, so you have to look at it all. But I do bring it up and I mention it and make sure everyone's aware of, you know, when they go on title, your joint tenants in common.
Right.
Yeah, explain it to them.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people would think it's super harmless, like, oh, I'm just moving my boyfriend in. You've done it 3 times. And it's like, you think that's harmless. And then...
How many boyfriends now?
It's harmless till it's not, right? Until then it's a 10-year relationship, and at the time it was very much...
Oh, this is my house, but then, 10 years passes and you try to kick them out and they're like,
no, it's not.
I don't think so.
Exactly.
I absolutely then recommend that somebody get a cohabitational agreement.
You just never know where life's going to take you, I think, and that's really big. One of the other questions with that too, kind of what you were mentioning of if you build this together. So how does a prenup work, or cohab, I guess? You're disclosing the assets that you have coming into the marriage or relationship, but then what about what you're building when you're together?
So that depends on what the prenuptial agreement says.
Okay.
And that's what the contract is, because I mean, most times if you're building it together, those are 50-50.
Okay.
Right? That should be how it is, but it's kind of hard to say with 100%, you know, certainty, but I mean, that's where the agreement would come in, right?
Okay.
So, but if you're building together, generally it should be 50-50. We're doing it together, right?
Yeah.
Right, but
that's cool. You could potentially maybe protect your income within the marriage as well, if you had 2 equal partners.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That's right. And you want to make sure that with your disclosure of your finances that everything is accurate, as we mentioned. And, you know, because you know what you have coming in, you know what you have during, what are you going to be left with coming out?
Yeah.
Right.
Something that I think is worth mentioning was interesting, and Matt and I took a long time to figure this one out. So obviously we're both real estate agents, and when it came time to sell my last house with my ex, it was like my business partner and I ended up listing the property, but at the time I didn't know if he was going to want his own representation for a realtor, which to me I was like, I'm not paying someone else to do a job that I can do. And so then when Matt and I were writing up our cohab, I currently own our home, but in the cohab there's a whole explanation as to currently he's a tenant, but this is the plan to get him into home ownership in our home, and then in the event that this breaks down, how are we going to sell the property? And so I don't remember all the details, but in there it's something like we would get 5 opinions. So one's an appraiser, and then we each bring in 2 realtors.
Oh my goodness.
It is so clear cut, because I was so nervous, and we sat down and talked this through for a long time, and I was like, I don't want a realtor that I strongly dislike to list my home. And so, and we'd have a third party call these realtors to get them in so that nobody knew. I couldn't call you because you would then price it low or high based on what I wanted. It would be so biased. So in this cohab, it's very, very detailed.
It's like 10 steps ahead of the game.
I know, but I was like,
exhausting.
That's fantastic, and that's a great way to outline it. That's a good...
And we agreed upon it now.
Yep.
And there's just no gray area. It's like, this is what's going to happen, and the average of those 5 prices, that's what we're listing the house at. and it's not up for discussion.
Okay. I thought you were going to say that you get the listing and the money too.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think he'd agree to that.
Yeah, I get the full commission and it's 10%.
That's right.
Yeah.
But no,
There's
yeah,
just-
that's great. And you are obviously through your life experiences, you're 10 steps ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Constantly learning. We actually have some clients, Jen and I, who have put into their wills that we will sell their house when
I
they
love
die.
that.
So
Right.
that
No gray area. It's not binding?
I mean, you can try, but I mean, the executor at the end of the day
gets to
has
make the
that.
decision.
I think that most families would like see that as a wish of the people that are now passed on. And most people are nice enough, I think you'd want to honor your family's wishes. Oh, maybe not. Okay.
It depends. And the way the world, listen, if you put that in your will, you guys aren't dying anytime soon. knock on wood, right? So
Yeah, we'll be
we
dead.
don't
No
know
one will
what,
know.
I mean,
I hope to God I'm not selling real estate by the time you die.
what's that supposed to mean?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And you don't, because I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to, especially in estates, I see that it's tough. One, people are grieving from a loved one loss, right? And money is a big factor, right? And so
No matter the amount.
So if you have another real estate agent, well, my friend says that her friend's real estate agent will say, we'll offer you only 4% instead of 5%. And so an executor has the duty to act in the best interest of the estate, right?
Or
So-
my friend's realtor says it's worth $450 and Olivia says it's worth $350.
Well,
Right.
the market will, I mean, whoever signs the ink on the page, right, will say that one. But
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big difference too, right? So that's how it works. Or what are the cost of operating the property, taxes, keeping it going, all these little things. Is there a mortgage? So what is the cost? Because if we list it high and it sits on the market for 6 months, who's
Yeah.
paying that, right? So there's there's a lot of factors.
Call me, I'll be the second realtor.
Yeah, that's
Just like I'm the second lawyer. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
This is, I think, too, like another good point that when you're when you're doing your cohab, I think it's a good time to also look at your will and make sure those two agreements are matching, right?
Yes, absolutely. You'd want to make sure that they kind of coincide with each other, especially with blended families.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that is a big factor. I do, to pump one out for the real estate and the will lawyers out there, but I think you should look at your wills. Not every year, but I mean, you want to look at it and make sure, has anything changed? When you do your taxes, has anything changed in my life? Is that, am I up to date?
Great point.
Most like lawyers who will draft a will, we kind of prepare for options A, B, C, and D, because we do want to have clientele come, but it should be in the event of, we've got all the options covered, right? And to make sure the estate planning is done properly, right? So, but if there is a significant, difference, then but you have to remember, if you have a will and you're not married, but then you do get married, being married changes a lot of factors, right?
Right, so it doesn't matter that everything's going to my mom, because as soon as you get married.
So add that to your list. Call the lawyer.
That's on the list. Prenup will.
Good.
Better call Bill.
Exactly. See,
I love
but
it.
so no, you want to make sure it doesn't. Now, it's not. If you don't have it done, there are other avenues that are expensive, because if things aren't done right and you're not providing for a spouse, spouses have dependent relief claims and things like that. But that's another whole different ballgame. But it's good to keep an eye on everything and know what your assets are, and be smart about it. But it's. Do you have a will?
I do, yeah.
Do you have a will?
Oh, Olivia, I had a will the second I bought my first house. I got my will done, but I think I'm like different than most people in that regard. Like I love to be super prepared with this stuff.
Sounds like we'd better take a look at it and see what's
Yes, so I
happening.
do need to change it since I have my cohab being signed on next Friday. But
Good.
yes,
Good.
yeah, it's expensive. I had
Here's
to
my
change it. I already had to change it once after my separation, and it's not cheap to do these things, but it's very important and worth every penny I will say that again.
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's, each lawyer is different, but
Yeah.
you want to make sure that it's done right. So
Yes.
that's important.
I have one more question about cohabs and prenups before we ask you the final question.
Oh, sure.
So is there any major misconceptions or anything that you think you see repetitively with people in regards to cohabs and prenups? Like what's coming up often that the hearsay doesn't match up with the actual law?
Like I say, I'm not in this every
Yes.
day, but from what I see and hear, a lot of people think this can be done quickly, right? And a lot of people think that mine's easy, it's in and out, and the expectation of timeline, right? Because people think I can do that, it can be done, it's not that difficult, but it takes a while, right? And lawyers have lives. People don't understand that. I mean, everything is like you, realtors too.
Yeah.
What are you doing Christmas morning? I want to go see a house.
Yeah.
How about now?
Yeah.
Or you call your lawyer and say he was 10 minutes late from dropping him off for Christmas brunch.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so I mean, I think people need to have expectations of timelines. Limitations are, it's just that, like I say, you have to spend the money. It's not cheap, but you want to make sure it's done right.
And I think a lot of people think, like even you had kind of discussed, like, can I just write up a document and sign it ourselves? And like, it's just not the way it's not going to hold up. So we got to invest the money to do
It
this.
may not hold up,
Oh,
right?
okay,
It
right.
depends. There's always mays.
My
and-
chat GPT is pretty good.
My AI lawyer.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are a lot of Google lawyers out there. and-
Yes. Matthews is the same
and-
thing about like Dr. Google. Like
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
thinks Google knows it all. We still need professionals.
That's what Matt does as like he is my doctor. When I sit in front of him, he's like, "What are your symptoms?" He puts them in AI and then it spits it out.
And the thing that I do see is a lot of people sit around the kitchen table listening to their parents'
Yeah.
friends, or on the cottage. Everybody's different. Every single circumstance is different. A lot of people lie. Sorry, shouldn't say lie. They bend the truth. Oh, I only paid how much, or or what was the outcome of the? Because everyone wants to be a winner.
And I
right?
think it's also how you remember it. Like you
True.
might remember it differently than how it actually happened.
That's on trauma response.
Trauma blocking, yes.
Right, and with these cohabs and prenups, there's not a lot of trauma yet because you're going into this happily. But it all depends, right? And so people need to, and the law changes, okay?
Right.
Your sister's cousin's best friend's aunt who got divorced or had a prenup 17 years ago,
Not the same.
40 years ago is not the same. Laws are changing, jurisdictions change. What you did in BC is different than what happened in Ontario.
Right.
That's a big thing people need to know, right? And they're not really interchangeable. Ontario law is different than
Okay,
any
that's
other-
good to
And
know too.
ChatGPT's pulling from the States, so
Oh
we're
gosh.
screwed.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is. Come on.
You're too old, Billy.
Okay, so speaking of your age, you are our first guest on the podcast, and we're starting a trend where we are going to ask our guests. Overall, our message is about building financial freedom and working towards financial success at a young age. And so, if you're looking back into your 20s, what would you tell yourself now, whether it's financial related or not? I'm sure you have
I'm just grinning. This is great. Now, you had mentioned this, that you would throw this at me earlier today.
It was yesterday, but you didn't read it till today.
Very prepared.
Busy, come on. So anyway, I thought about that on my drive here with my coffee. And I was, everybody, like, think of you in your 20s. Think of me in my 20s.
Well, we're still in our 20s.
Well, for us, for Matt and I.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is Aaron?
The elderly.
Aaron's in his 30s.
Good. So for us men, no. Anyway, but everybody's different. I mean, I thought about it and I was like, what would I do in my 20s? And now, is it only financially based?
Just advice that you'd give to your 20-year-old self. It can be anything.
It's so, like, I would say hug your loved ones. You know what I mean? Love them,
that's
Nice. I also think that you need to trust in you. A lot of people say when you're 20, you're kind of, you don't know, you're lost or you're floating in the world, and oftentimes your friends or family or pressures, oh, well, my friend's got a house, or go at your own pace. People grow up, people grow differently.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know people who were married at 24, who are now late 30s, 40. But no, some people aren't together anymore. I mean, you grow. Who you were as 20, as 25, as 30, you're completely different. And people change each and every day, year. So of course I would, I'd hug my loved ones, the people, but I would also say, take that trip. Spend that money, buy that drink at the bar.
Okay. I like it.
I always did that anyway. And you only live once, right? Have fun.
Yeah.
Don't, dwell on the small things. But then I also say, should you have saved more money, get money into an RSP, put a little bit of money away, of course you should do that.
And that's what we're trying to pitch here, is that you can do both.
Yeah.
Right.
Find the balance.
You have, one thing is have a grip on your finances and have a grip on, I was lucky enough that I didn't grow up in the age of social media and everybody has, Netflix accounts. You lose a lot of money that way when you don't cook at home, when you don't, you're always buying,
We
eating
call that
out.
cutting the fluff.
The fluff.
Yeah.
It's all fluff that we have in our life that we try to cut out.
Well, that's important there.
Yeah.
So. But what
I
about
like
you
that.
ladies? Excuse me, now let me ask you a question.
We didn't get the message yesterday to be prepared for this question.
Oh,
And we're still in our 20s. We're in the process of figuring it out with our listeners.
We will report back to you when we're 30.
40. When we're your age.
Okay. I hope I'm not on this couch when they're 40.
I hope
I hope I'm on my yacht.
Yeah, with your feet up.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I think that your message there is really nice, and I think it actually blends in very well with like the balance of right now with a cohab, you are in love, and let's balance love with also protecting yourself and your assets and your financial future.
It's all about balance.
Yeah.
And that's right. And be honest to yourself. You're in love, but if you're seeing signs, don't be afraid to say, this isn't working
Even
out.
Right.
statistically, why
That's
do
a
you think
sign.
that you're above the stats?
Yeah.
Because people are naive or they think they can make it.
Yeah.
Right? Don't you point at her for.
Because she loves love so much.
I always have hope. I'm like
That's
a
good.
yeah.
See, it's good to be an
Yes,
optimist.
But
Don't dwell.
an optimist with protection in place.
I love it.
There
Yes.
you go. That's
Well, thanks so much for coming on today, Billy. We appreciate you.
one thing I did want to note. You said
Yes.
the word listeners.
Yeah. Well, we have more than one.
Oh yeah?
You're an asshole.
Matt and Frank?
Yeah. Frank is 2. Aaron's
Frank's like
3.
goo goo gaga.
He's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That was
Well, I'll
really
make
fun.
sure my little baby Olivia and Jazz will watch this.
Okay,
now. All right,
good.
so
Hi,
hey,
Jazz
we're
and
getting up to
Olivia.
10. All
There
right.
we go. Thanks, guys.
Okay.